Hi, today I want to take a look at the Neo Geo X. It's a handheld games console, it's a hybrid games console, a lot in the style of the Switch. It's manufactured by Tomo, and it was actually licensed by SNK Playmore. It's got a 480 by 272 display, which can be in 4:3 or 16 by 9. It's got 128 meg of DDR2. It's an X-Burst CPU clocked at 1 GHz. Original sales price was $199 US. Currently released in 2012 using the Final Burn emulation to run AES and MVS games, and it has in the background it's got a Linux-based operating system. The console was originally conceived and reported in January 2012. That was later confirmed around about March-June time for its eventual release in December. This followed on from the Neo Geo Pocket in 1999, so was the first piece of hardware that SNK had released in about 8 years and 11 years as a handheld. The unit comes with 20 games pre-installed in the system, and there's an SD card in the side, obviously for allowing you to play additional ROMs. Initially there was rumours that this machine was going to be quite expensive, retailing at about $800, but surprisingly the gold package, which eventually was revealed, only came out at $200. The games that come pre-installed on it were 3 Count Bout, Alpha Mission 2, Art of Fighting, Baseball Star 2, Cyberlip, Fatal Fury Special, The King of Fighters 95, The King of Monsters, Last Resort, League Bowling, Magician Lord, Metal Slug, Mutation Nation, Nam 1975, Puzzled, Real Bout Fatal Fury, Samurai Showdown 2, Super Sidekicks, and World Heroes Perfect. This is the base station, the dock, so very much like a Switch. The unit docks into this. This is like the Switch dock in effect. There's a menu button on the top and a false cartridge slot. So looking around the unit, you've got the open and on switch, just like the original AES. A micro HDMI, which I thought was didn't particularly like that bit. So a nice tidy console. It's shaped very much like the original, the original aesthetics. This is the actual console itself. Nice little unit. I think it could have been done with a little bit bigger. The rubberization on the back is like most consoles at the time, starts to go a little bit sticky. That's the little SD card add-on, but there's more about that later. Got the on switch on the side. On the top we've got some side buttons, another micro HDMI port, a microphone port, and the charge port. Nothing on that side. On the other side there's volume up and down next to a headphone jack and a brightness buttons. So it docks into the unit quite nicely. It's a little bit fiddly. It's not like a Switch where it docks really nice. You've got to be careful obviously how you push it in, but that's how it docks into the main unit, which I do think is really nice. And then obviously that can close over the top. Brilliant idea. So this is the X versus the real full fat Neo Geo. Just wanted to make a little bit of comparison just to see, is the build quality as good? What's it actually like in comparison to the real thing? Looking at the sticks, the stick doesn't feel quite the same. There just seems to be something a little bit missing. The aesthetics of it and the buttons all feel authentic, and the heaviness and the weight of it and the way everything feels. The actual stick just feels a little bit off. Size comparison between the X and a normal AES, it's about the same size as the original. It's not a massive deviation from the original. It's slightly smaller, as you can see, maybe a fifth smaller. Looking at the plastics and the way they've styled it and the build quality, I wouldn't have been disappointed back in the day of purchasing this. There are a lot of criticisms of this that we'll come to later, but looking at it as the way they've designed it and the aesthetics of the machine, you can't go wrong. So in the box, you get obviously the instruction manual, which is obviously in English. This is what it looks like when the system's on charge. This unit's probably been in my collection for about 9 or 10 years. I bought it long before the prices obviously went up, so I've just decided to give it a charge. But what you'll notice, I've actually got 2 of them. Back in the day I did bid on 2 of these at the same time, thinking I wouldn't get one of them, and I didn't want to miss it. They were both less than £100, so I did end up winning both auctions. What I decided to do was I was going to modify one and keep the other one standard. So I'll just note there that, like you say, these can be bought in later revisions. They were available separately. You could just buy just the console without the dock. There's a reason for that later on. There was criticisms on the machine that the HDMI output was muddy and wasn't very good. So I think they responded by dropping the dock and just going as a handheld unit. The problem was, I think, that the build quality of the machine, and specifically the screen that they chose, was regarded as being a bit washed out and not very good. And the display through the HDMI port, when it was docked, again was called washed out and not very good. And also the emulation that the machine developed was also, you know, the way it emulated the games, there was obviously issues with a bit of screen tearing and stuff like that, so it was heavily criticised at the time. One other issue that the machine had was that media could be added through an SD card, but it wasn't a standard SD card. So the original, obviously that first SD card I've shown you was an original normal SD card. This card, which obviously is compatible with the Neo Geo X, what they did, they moved the terminals round so it wasn't compatible with the standard SD card, which made it really difficult to transfer or add games. So what happened was that they created, the community and modders and stuff like that created this little SD card, which all it really did was allowed you could fit a micro SD into this, and all it did was rearrange the terminals to allow the Neo Geo X to be able to read it. Again, there was a lot of criticism on that the games weren't importable from a PC or via Wi-Fi onto this storage medium. So again, people didn't take to that way of getting their games off this machine. It also comes with this device. You couldn't get it with it. This was something I bought separately, but this device was used to reflash the system and add a custom firmware. This device allowed you to actually hack the console. You could put on a firmware of V500A, which was a firmware that you could use this device to update the system. Once you'd got this NGX tool all installed and the custom hardware on it, you could run games for the Mega Drive, the SNES, Game Boy, Game Boy Advance, Capcom CPS, PS1. So there were lots of games that you could actually add to this system, as long as as well as Neo Geo ROMs itself. So on switching the machine on, take a closer look at the machine. You can see it's not a particularly great screen. Yeah, it could have been better, but whether that would have drove the price up, I don't know. Looking at it, the colours are not too bad. It's a little bit washed out in places. It's not a great screen, and I can see why there was criticism at the time. But Metal Slug, it plays fairly good for a quick fix. It's not a bad screen. It stood the test of time. So just a quick overview again of just what's on the externals. You've got 2 USB ports, an on-off switch, which basically just drives and charges. When you turn that on, it turns the internal unit on. There's a memory button on the top, which allows you to select NTSC or PAL. Like I said, the cartridge slot is dead, so that's pretty much everything on the top of the machine. This is the when you put the games on the card. Well, that's just me pressing the menu button. That's what you see when you press the that button on the top of the unit. So that's the machine docked. So it's a fairly well made. When you consider £200. I think it's $100. No, I think it was $200 and 179 British pounds. Was that a rip-off? Was it? For what you got the arcade stick, you got the dock, you got some extra games on an SD. So was it that bad a deal? Back in the day, £200 not a lot today, I suppose, but I like the idea of it. It is a quirky system, and it is very reminiscent of the Switch in the way it does it. So obviously we're going to take a look at some games now just to see what they look like on the big screen. So again, just start with Metal Slug. So on its internal screen, you know, it was a bit rough and a bit muddy, as they called it. Now they have criticised the HDMI output, but as you can see there, I don't know if you can actually see there, you can actually see some screen tearing. A lot of people said this was due to the bad emulation that the system had, which is a shame really, because considering it's been released by, you know, SNK themselves, we all expected better. So this one's King of Fighters 95. The system was very, you know, all of the Neo Geos were well renowned for being, you know, heavily laden with fighting games. At the end of the day, is what it was known for. It doesn't disappoint. I don't, you know, looking at the visuals, what I've seen, I think the colour reproduction doesn't look as bad as what people made out. Yes, there is a lot of screen tearing when you see some of the games like Metal Slug. Yeah, you can see a lot of screen tearing from left to right. So games like this, the images are a lot more static, so it's a lot less noticeable to see the screen tearing. So looking at the game card again, this is the retro emulation side of it. So just going to take a look at V-Rally on the Game Boy Advance. I think the system plays this fairly well. You know, it's a fair reproduction of what you'd expect from it, and the beauty of it is obviously you're playing it in, you know, near full screen. It's you know, colour reproduction. As you know, I think as a console, as a handheld, I think I can see where the criticism was justified. When it's in its docked mode and obviously running it on a modern TV, you know, I think it got away with it. I think, you know, I wouldn't have been too upset with this particular quality of image. I think, yes, as a handheld, I think the screen was a bit small and the audio wasn't much cop. But as you can see there's some screen tearing, because we're going from left to right, you can see some screen tearing there, so it is a bit of a deal breaker. You know, I can see why this machine got a lot of criticism. It is a lovely machine, and maybe it was a machine ahead of its time. The Switch has shown us that it is a way of doing it. It is a successful way of using a machine, but maybe the hardware wasn't there, or they made the machine too cheap. They should have made it a bit more costlier and put a better screen on, and obviously maybe put a different processor on and used a different type of emulation. The emulation side of it had some controversy surrounding it, because they used the Final Burn Alpha emulation, which was meant to be used for you know, as a non-profit emulator. And so obviously that was a little bit of controversy, and there was a little bit of controversy to do with Tomo and SNK themselves. SNK Playmore publicly ordered Tomo to cease manufacture because of low manufacturing standards. But maybe that's a thing for another video. If you got this far, thanks for watching, and we'll see you again in the next video. Bye for now.